So Jason Feldman is a public health consultant with an interest in workforce development, public safety, capacity development initiatives, and quality improvement programs. Jason seeks out projects at the intersection of community health and environmental systems change. His versatile experience includes collaborating with partners in different jurisdictions, such as developing legislative safeguards to restrict forever chemicals in Oregon, HIV STD prevention interventions in Washington State Department of Health, as well as the Florida Department of Health, where Jason also provides project management for statewide cancer control. Mr. Feldman is a graduate of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Public Health Prevention Service Leadership Training Fellowship Program. Jason earned degrees at Northwest University, Tulane University School of Public Health, and Tropical Medicine, and has completed advanced coursework from the George Washington University, University of Washington. Currently, Jason is completing a certificate training in happiness studies, the science and facilitation of happiness and well-being for individuals and teams. Michelle is an international speaker, a career and leadership consultant and coach, specializing in helping leaders and professionals grow their business and achieve their career goals. As a founder of Pacific Technologies Consulting Group and co-founder of Happiness Studies Academy Alumni and Business Club, Michelle passionately promotes well-being in organizations. She has developed happiness at workplace workshops and has trained hundreds of leaders, HR, and trainers. As a key facilitator in Microsoft's company-wide culture transformation initiative, Michelle has trained Microsoft managers and employees globally in the past 10 years. She is frequently invited by the U.S. Embassy to Asia for speaking engagements on leadership, DEI, career, and organizational well-being. Michelle holds numerous training certificates, including an MBA, an MS in finance, and an MA in happiness studies. Both extremely well-qualified presenters. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Jason and Michelle.
Fantastic. If you want to just advance to the next slide, and we'll go over some of the sections for today's presentation, that would be great. All right. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Results Washington, in this great state, in this opportunity to share this afternoon, this morning in some places. So we're going to talk about what is meant by Resilience 2.0 and this idea of anti-fragility and why it's important, where there are opportunities. We also are going to practice some techniques here, and I am absolutely personally committed to this being an interactive, fun, facilitated opportunity for some chatting. So please feel free and don't delay yourself with that. You may have questions, you may have ideas. We're going to share some stories, and we were very interested in your reactions and your contributions to this. And without any further delay, I am going to hand it over to Michelle. Thank you.
Thanks, Jason. And thanks, everyone, for being here. We're so excited to share with you some of the knowledges we have and the concept of Resilience 2.0. So I will start with a real story, which you may find it resonates with you. Not exactly the same scenario, but it triggers me to think more of what choices we have when we are facing some challenges, which is sometimes is pretty hard. So the real story is about a client. Because I am a consultant, I'm a trainer and a coach. I have a coachee, a client who I coach, who is an engineer leader. And he was diagnosed with something called retinitis pigmentosa. If you don't know the name, that's totally fine. I didn't know this at all. And when I heard from him, I was like, okay, what's that? So it's a kind of a genetic eye disease that has no cure for it. There's no way to, with today's technology, there's no way to cure this. And this news is like a big rock fall onto him. So he's losing his vision gradually. And first was in the night vision. So he kind of, can't see much, right, in the night. Then it starts to impact his day activities and his work. And then he couldn't drive. So just in a few years, he becomes legally blind. Now, think if you were him, how would you feel? And what choices do you have? And what would you do? Well, please use the chat function to type your thoughts. We would love to hear, as a human, right? If you are standing in this person's shoes, what kind of a reaction you would have, and what would you do? Thank you. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. I see chats coming in. Yeah, when you are sharing your thoughts on this, which is a true story, very unfortunate, right, for this person. And I'm going to share with you what happens. So first, my client, when he got this news, right, because his eyesight is starting going down, then he went to see the doctor, and the doctor gave him this sentence: "You will go to blind eventually," right? And there's nothing we can do. So he was really, really sad. And he refused this reality, and he was frustrated, and he felt helpless. And his thoughts were something like, well, why me? Why is this happening to me? And he was really beaten down by this victim feeling, this victim thought. Then after consuming this for a little while, for some days, then he started to change his feelings. He started to feel angry. He felt this is so unfair. What did I do wrong? I'm such a good person. What did I do wrong? So I'm being punished. But as his eye vision was getting worse and worse, he started to accept this reality. So on one side, he was actively looking for solutions to slow down the loss of his vision. And he's also practicing to sharpen his skills, his other senses, such as hearing and touching, to try to get around and try to do as much as he can. And on the other side, he realized that he can use his becoming blindness to help others. He realized this is an advantage that he has. He wants to use technology to help people who cannot see. He wants to use technology to help these people to achieve more. He realized these advantages that he didn't have before, because now he can empathize blind people better. He can understand these people's needs and pains better. And he can help to develop products for people with vision issues. So he embraced a new mission for his own life. He joined a product team to work on this new mission to help people who have vision issues, right? So he's really, really working hard towards that. So that's the story of a real person in this world. I have the privilege to work with him and seeing his change, the journey he went through and he's being on now. Very determined to do things, to contribute to the world. So from this story, I want to share with you that when something bad happens, then we can see typically three types of reactions or three types of choices that people have. This person went through all of this. So the first one is fragile, which is there's a disorder, something bad happened, and being damaged by this, and breakdown. So that's fragile. And then resilience is the second level, which is, well, yes, something bad happened. I went down, but I bounced back to the previous level. That's resilience, and we call it resilience 1.0. And what happened after that in this particular clients? Some people they stay in the fragile, some people stays in the resilient, but in this particular person, he went to the next level, which is anti-fragile. So he benefited from this disorder and he becomes stronger. And he has this, in psychology, we call it a post-traumatic growth, which now we can label it as resilience 2.0. And that's what we're trying to share with you about this concept, resilience and resilience 2.0. To use another way to visualize it on this is, I really like this chart to help us to really understand what this resilient 1.0 and 2.0, what's the difference, right? So if you look at this chart, the vertical is strength. So when something happens at the breaking point, that's where you see the difference, right? Everybody will be impacted. Then some people, they stay in the fragile, they're broken. And some people, after the dip, they bounce back, resilient 1.0, the same as before. The strength is the same. And some people grow stronger, higher strength than before. That's anti-fragile, that's resilience 2.0. So that's the concept we want to share with you first, and to help you think about how can we really grow this muscle, become this resilience 2.0, become anti-fragile, and have this post-traumatic growth. Now, why is this important? Why is resilience important? Well, it's important in our life, we all know that, but why is it important at workplace? We can look at this into two levels. One is at the individual level, the other is at the organizational level. So according to research, on the individual level, when we grow our resilience muscle, when we become anti-fragile, we can cope with stress much better, and we are less likely to suffer from burnout, and we can become stronger, and we can adapt our behaviors to work better, and we will be able to use the resilience, our resilience to buffer against the workplace stresses, and we will have better physical and mental well-being. In the end, we can perform even better. So that's resilience on the individual level. Then on the organizational level, there's some research from McKinsey, which is very, very, give us a quite good insight. McKinsey had a research on the relationship between companies' organizational health and their financial performance during the COVID-19 pandemic time. Their research shows that those businesses exhibiting healthy, resilient behaviors, such as knowledge sharing, performance reviews, and bottom-up innovation in times like in the pandemic, right? So they were less likely than those unhealthy organizations to go bankrupt over the following 2 years during the pandemic, starting from 2020. And this chart I'm showing really shows you some of their data. In this chart, the organizations with their health index, which McKinsey has a way to measure that, the organizational health index. If the health index, those organizations at the bottom quartile, which is the first bar on this chart, so those organizations, they have 73% likelihood to go bankrupt over the next 2 years when they were facing major disruptions like the pandemic, something nobody expected suddenly happened, everything's shut down, right? But those at the top quartile, which is the third bar, the one on the most right bar, they only had 30% likelihood for this kind of going to bankrupt over the next 2 years. That doesn't mean 30% must go, right? It's just the likelihood on that. Okay, so that's some data, some foundation for you to understand the topic we're trying to share today. And hand over back to Jason.
Thank you, Michelle. So last October, Michelle and I described some of the investments that are taking place with the Washington State Department of Health and other state agencies around Washington that I am very proud to be part of as a Washington State resident and as someone who, in fact, was at the DOH going back to the drafting the charter for a health and wellness program that has launched into 5 days a week, virtual, and the occasional or probably monthly in-person hikes year-round in different locations. Well, since then, employee happiness and well-being continues to intersect with the DOH strategic priorities. I want to make a point of calling out Kristen Peterson, who has been in charge of much of this material and its development within the strategic plan. And more recently, there's the Be Well Why program, which really emphasizes emotional well-being, physical movement, nourishment, and social connection. And I like to always add, yeah, in the age of post, as Michelle was saying, COVID pandemic, which a lot of us on this call right now, probably all of us, were very much touched by and engaged in, and right there, feeling the pillars of this is a debilitating, maybe not disorder, but a real unpleasant event. And then in the middle, well, I'm really feeling the impacts, the limitations of it. And then from there, well, yeah, but there are things that I have control over that I can influence and that I can advance. And from there, we become stronger, hopefully. Let's move on to the next slide. So what are some factors that contribute to a person's resilience? Some of this might be biological. We talk a bit about post-traumatic growth, and before that, our hereditary epigenetics may have within them, certain predispositions for nervousness, as well as poise and ability to cope and manage stressful events. And that's also obviously something that we learn. Reframing as a practice is something that can certainly help us, rather than falling into a practice of seeing undesirable events as catastrophes necessarily, but how we react. And self-regulating may also include how we talk to ourselves, because that certainly is going to influence how we feel. And taking perspective and having a belief that good things are in our future is also going to influence and really impact how we feel, and how we, again, may develop a practice of self-care, of eating well, of our emotional well-being, how we relate to others, going back to the key focus areas that Washington DOH is implementing into their programming. So emphasis again on the self-efficacy, I can attitude. And the more that we have that in our day-to-day lives, the stronger we can feel, and the more empowering we can be for our team members. Again, emphasis on social connection and our relationships, and hopefully our broader community connections. Let's go on to the next slide. So in terms of team development, team bolstering, obviously different teams, different companies, different organizations have differing cultures, differing priorities, and compositions. I'm currently part of a team of 11 at a nonprofit in Miami, and I'm going to meet them for the first time in 6 days from now in Miami. I am making that move. There's a lot that can be done remotely and especially in person around, organizing and implementing consistent practices of coffee breaks as a culture, whether it's coffee or not, but meeting, going on walking meetings, and asking to get to know more about one another. What are some trigger points? What are some areas that that bring you joy? What are some ways that we can help support you? So those are all important. I want to also emphasize Angela Duckworth in her book Grit has some excellent techniques for team building and internal coaching strategies. Not only how we talk to ourselves and how we lead teams, but how we really engage and lift up and bolster to support and to enhance the wellness and resiliency of our team members. So the question of how to achieve and sustain happiness is something that Aristotle was challenged with, right? A lot of others. Cyndi Lauper invested in the question of having fun and sharing, creating and sharing some happiness. I want to say that some prominent top universities around the country and around the world are investing in programs specifically around happiness studies. And when I say happiness studies, I'm not talking about positive psychology alone, but the study of personal wellness, yes, psychology, nutrition, art, and developing frameworks to enhance creativity and interpersonal well-being in a structured way. So Michelle happens to be part of the first cohort of the first master's program in happiness studies that is facilitated with and administered by the Centenary University, and Tal Ben-Shahar is the common denominator for a whole lot of this, including my and Michelle's knowing each other through a retreat associated with the World Happiness Summit. These are some of the universities that have coursework and increasingly advanced, varied opportunities for getting into this. And we encourage you to follow up if you have any questions about this. In the meantime, it's something that we're excited about and we're continuing to learn and share. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the 5 SPIRE elements, and then I'm going to ask Michelle to back me up and maybe add on to what I begin with. But the SPIRE model, sort of a framework, is what we use, and some of these carry over to the Washington DOH program, wellness program. The first one in the acronym is for spiritual well-being. And when we say spiritual, we're really emphasizing, or I want to emphasize anyway, purpose, belonging, finding meaning, which can take any number of channels and come from different kinds of sources. For a lot of people, their connections with their work are key. For other people, religion in an organized form is a big contributing factor for their spiritual wellness. Physical well-being involves how we take care of ourselves with grooming, with recovery, with eating well, with hopefully getting some exercise, some movement, going back to Washington DOH. Intellectual well-being is about having curiosity, emphasis on curiosity as an initial starting point, and utilizing our imagination, and yeah, taking care of ourselves, learning things. The questions that we ask certainly influence our realities, right? So intellectual well-being. I mean, there's a difference after all between watching Beavis and Butthead for 8 hours or watching maybe a TED Talk. I'm old enough to know what Beavis and Butthead was, although it's easily forgettable. So relational well-being, of course, we're talking about our connections, our interactions with people, and our social support networks. And all of this has been challenged, and depending on the lifestyles that we have and where we are, sometimes geographically, these can be hampered. They can be challenged. Emotional well-being actually emphasizes allowing ourselves to feel the spectrum of the natural emotions that come up for us. And included in that, allowing ourselves to feel devastation, sadness, loss, pain, anger, in order to also feel the elations, the joys, the wonderful sensations of inspiration, of falling in love, of just laughing hard at whatever it is that may be happening, in a way that is natural for us. And within that, hopefully, a healthy regulation of our emotions. Whole person wellness. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Michelle. Thank you.
Yeah. So Jason just introduced this framework for us to think about happiness and the resilience. Today, we are focusing on the resilience elements. So what we're going to do next is we will switch gear to really go to the how, which is we're going to share with you one of those techniques under each of these 5 elements of the SPIRE model so that you can take something home and you can practice immediately. And some of the things we can take you and practice right now just to get you started. So I will start with the first one, spiritual well-being. And spiritual well-being, as Jason introduced, is about having a meaning, purpose of your life, right? But it's also about well, how do you live your day-to-day? Be mindful, be present, and you can see you can turn the ordinary into extraordinary through being present, through being really living the day to the fullest. So a lot of techniques can do to help you do that, to help you increase your spiritual well-being on the mindful side. So the one I want to introduce to you today is a really simple one, which is mindful breathing. Research has found several benefits of mindful breathing. That includes it can help you reduce stress and anxiety. It can help you improve your emotional well-being. It can help enhance focus and concentration, boost the immune system, promote better sleep, and reduce the symptoms of depression. So that's all very, very good. Then how do we do mindful breathing? There are many different ways to do it. Here, I'm just going to introduce you a very, very simple one, which I use quite a lot. And it's not just me use. It's also being adopted by the U.S. Navy SEALs to help them to handle situations when they are under high pressure, uncertainty. So the technique I want to introduce is called box breathing. Box, B-O-X. And it's also called a square breathing. So you can think about a box or a square. 4 sides are equal. What it means here is you're going to breathe in a way you inhale for 4 counts, then you hold the breath for 4 counts, then you exhale for 4 counts, then you hold the breath for another 4 counts. So it's the same amount of time, right? The counts when you do this inhale and exhale and holding in between. And I'm going to take you through just one round, then you can practice it, because it's very simple to learn. All right. If you are ready, you can, like me, I like to close my eyes to try it. So you can close your eyes, and I'm taking you through the first round. So, all right. So we are inhale for 4 count. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you can do it at your own pace for another 2 rounds, just to experience it. All right, I finished my 2 rounds. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so that's a really simple, quick technique you can use, which is called mindful breathing and box breathing under the mindful breathing, which is part of the spiritual well-being to help you focus on the present now. All right, so second part of these techniques we want to introduce to you is under the physical well-being, which is focus on how you can better handle stress. At work, we all have a lot of things to make us feel stressed. So I want to just quickly ask you, what are some common stressors you have noticed in your own workplace, your own day-to-day work? You can use chat to share some of those thoughts. Ooh, I saw already antisocial coworkers, deadlines, noisy office, the public, the frequent distraction, all these requirements, nitpickers, change fatigue, miscommunication, workloads, meetings, internet issues. Yes, today we had internet issues for our moderator, right? That's a very stressful moment. I believe Tanya was stressed at that moment. And then how can we handle this, right? So thanks everyone for sharing. Really love your sharing, your interaction here. Okay, so yeah, we all experience all this, and everybody have some personal experience. Here's a category, kind of summarize it into these different categories. So like as many of you mentioned, the interpersonal conflicts, this organization with all these many different things coming to us, right? And then we have to multitasking a lot of the times. And we work so hard and all kinds of things. And there's a physical discomfort, including the noise, all these things, right? So there are many workplace stressors bothering us and adding all this stress to us. And I want to get your collective wisdom here. And what are some techniques that you have used to help de-stress, to help yourself handle all this stress every day at work? So please share in the chat. Let's see, what are some things or techniques you have used? Whoa, I love it. Take a break, daily walk. And many of you mentioned about walk, right? Walking during lunchtime or just walk away from my desk, all these things. Wow, journaling, having coffee, or music, yoga, practice gratitudes. Oh, wow, so great. There are many, many things here. And of course, breathing, we're just talking about, you know, do a little bit of meditation if you have time. All these things are great techniques. So we are learning from each other from this, and we can create boundaries. We can do better in the interpersonal things. We can organize our time, our stuff better, our work better, and we can change the physical environment to make it better, right? All these things that mentioned here. Yeah, I love all this sharing here. That's great. Here, I want to also share with you something that you may haven't thought that much, but it's been very well researched. First, I want to share with you a technique or something that I think is fundamental to help us think about the stress and how to handle stress. It is to change your perspective on stress. Our perspective, most likely, you or like me before I studied all these things, was like stress is bad. And my doctor told me stress is bad. It will raise your blood pressure. It will cause all this disease, right? So you need to handle stress. You need to find ways to de-stress, right? But from some research from the scientists, they found something that the stress itself is not the absolute enemy to our health. It's the way how we look at stress can be a real enemy. If we think stress is bad and stress is threatening us, threatening our health, our life, all these things, and then we will become really tense, and we will make even worse beyond the stress itself. So what we need to do is really to understand stress better, and we can change our perspectives of stress. Then we can make stress as our friend. I want to introduce you to a really great TED Talk, very popular. You can find it on YouTube. It's called "How to Make Stress Your Friend." We have listed it here in the resource under this slide. This is by Katie McGonigal. She's a lecturer in Stanford University, and she practices. She's the advisor for people about stress, and she talked about this huge discovery from scientists about what the way, if we just change this way how we look at stress, change our perspective of stress, we can be more friendly with stress. And we can also use stress to help us become better performer, be more productive, be more efficient. Because I don't know you, but for me, a lot of times when I'm under a deadline, I'm really focused. I'm no longer multitasking. I'm just laser focused, get it done, right? So that's stress can be helpful in some way. Anyway, so there's a lot of science findings, stuff about this perspective of stress and how it can become your friend if you handle it in a different way. So that's number one. You can look for it to get to know more about the knowledge being shared by Katie, by the experts there. The other thing I want to really emphasize is think about it. If stress is not our dead enemy, then we can think about a lack of recovery is our enemy. So the antidote to stress here is recovery. What does we mean by recovery? Well, recovery, it has three levels. One is micro recovery, which many of you have mentioned the techniques you used to de-stress during work. That's macro, which is like you take a walk, you take a break, you get out from your computer, right? You chat to a friend, to someone at your office. You have your lunch, right? Really focus on your lunch versus eating in front of the computer doing the work. And you take a few moments to breathe or meditate. You take a yoga, many different ways. The micro recovery and allow time to reflect. I think I just saw this. Yeah, so those are really good ones. So micro recovery takes micro time, few minutes, even just a few seconds, right? Do it during your work time. From time to time, take that micro recovery. Then there's the medium recovery, which is very essential for our health and for our handling stress. That is really allow yourself enough time to sleep. For different people, different hours, but for me, 7 to 8 hours, that's my comfort zone of sleeping. So having a good night of sleep, it really helps you recover, and it really helps you manage stress and increase your resilience much better. And the next day, you will be more productive. So medium recovery, sleep. And the macro recovery, which takes longer time. It can be 1 week, 2 week, or a month vacation, depending on what you can afford. Long weekend, right? You really disconnect from all these stressors so that you can really recover and come back refreshed. All right, so that's some quick techniques on handle stress, which is physical well-being. I'm handing over back to Jason to give you a few things under the other three elements.
Thank you. So I want to include some information here, some perspective here that for me resonates with capacity, resilience, and yes, enhanced progressive anti-fragility, which may be a continuum, something that we can strive towards with new information. In kindergarten, sometimes a teacher might say, hey, wait. Look, different people are smart in different ways. But I feel like in our society, that's something that a lot of us forget. So why am I including this? Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because it's something that I do try to remind myself of, that, well, different people are smart in different ways. This comes from Howard Gardner's different forms of intelligence. He actually outlines 9. Linguistic intelligence, people who are articulate and clever and smart with words. Logical, mathematical intelligence, people who are into their numbers, statistics. Spatial intelligence. Bodily kinetic intelligence, people who know their bodies. Maybe ideally the fitness instructor who we're going to see, who's smart in that way and in a whole lot of different ways. Musical intelligence, part of the creativity family. Interpersonal intelligence. Intrapersonal intelligence is knowing ourselves well. And naturalistic intelligence, and then a critical evaluation is another skill, another form of intelligence. I'm going to build on this as we advance to the next slide, this being something for us to think about. So with that context in mind, something that over recent months when I've had interviews, recent years really, depending on the position, depending on the interview panel, depending on the energy and the time, I have been asked, so what's something else about you that you'd like to share? And I found myself occasionally saying, well, I'm left-handed. And in fact, to be honest with you, I don't always wait until that's asked. This is something that I emphasize because left-handedness is associated with, well, the right side of our brain, which controls visual spatial intelligence forms, creativity, artisticness, imagination, imaginativeness, and a lot of nonverbal skills. Well, being really honest, in addition to being left-handed, I'm also dyslexic. And that right there reflects, as an example, Malcolm Gladwell has done a lot of research on malgender dyslexia and the brain and social professional trajectories. It's wonderful work in one of his books, and he's talked about this a great deal. And from there, from there, this particular visual really speaks to me. It's a picture of a judge or somebody looking at a row of different animals, and the caption says, for a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. Yeah, well, one of these is a fish in a tank. So if I were to have been told all my life that, yeah, look, we live in a right-handed world, you need to learn how to do everything with your right hand, That would be challenging. If I were told that, hey, the only accurate available measure of your level of intelligence or capability or how smart you are is based on some kind of a standardized test, that would be challenging. But my point is, different people, yes, are smart in different ways, and learning how to live with and adapt with my brain working differently than from other people, and likewise with any of our team members, that allows us individually and collectively as teams to really boost our capacity and our continued anti-fragility and enhanced resilience. Let's move on to the next slide. All right, so strengthen relationships at work. We heard a great deal about taking walks. There are also, albeit sometimes virtual, group yoga opportunities that the DOH puts on, that I know Healthcare Authority has hired different wellness coordinators to work with different institutions and agencies around the state to enhance. And there could be in-person meetings going on. You could find out who else is on your team in the different box that you see during a weekly meeting where they live, and you could make arrangements to meet with them. And what are some things that we can do to increase positive emotions at work? Well, we can bring this to our team meetings in an honest way. We can look for ways to support our coworkers. And hopefully you'll have some ideas that you'll share in just another minute and a half when we get to an open talk. All right, I want to summarize that we have presented on this idea of anti-fragility. I have characterized it as a continuum, right? Bouncing back beyond recovery. We talked about why this is important at work, and I know our workplace might be our kitchen or our living room part of the time. How to increase resilience. We talked about the SPIRE model from the Happiness Studies Academy. Tal Ben-Shahar leads that. We've talked about mindful breathing. Michelle guided us through that. Ways to handle stress. Understanding our strengths. Different types of intelligence. How to strengthen relationships at work. And increase positive emotions. These are some selected resources and references. They are available on the slide deck, which will be saved. I want to give a very big shout out. My friend Lydia is on this. Thank you, Lydia. Cher Levinson. Many, many more. Kim Concepcion. I want to also shout out to Melanie Gonzalez in Miami.
Okay, that's the end of our presentation. We were trying to save a few minutes for Q&A. So yeah, let's open up for Q&A and I can stop sharing.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for bearing with the tech issues in the beginning. I'm happy to be back with y'all. We do have one question and only time for one question because we're quite at the end. But basically, this person is kind of calling out, how if you have an obvious physical illness that you go to work with, let's say a broken arm or just some other obvious physical illness, and you have to go home, it's well understood. But if you have a mental breakdown or depression or something else that's not so obvious and physical, but maybe a little bit more hidden and mental, that it's not always received as well, not always supported. And so the question is, how can we bring more awareness and support to workplace mental health crisis? And why is a mental health employee mostly ignored?
Oh, that's such a great question. I can start first, and Jason, you can jump in. So this is a very common, especially these years, since the pandemic time. I see the increasing amount of mental health issues in workplace, but people don't say. Especially now, people even don't see each other face to face, right? If they work virtually, so people are behind the scene, and but many people are suffering. Now, even the pandemic has passed, still mental health issue become like a phenomenon increasingly in this whole society. So at workplace, just like this question raised, it's hard to see. What can we do? Well, in some of those big companies like Microsoft, I have been working with them, consulting with them. They have put a lot of education into the company and kind of teaching managers as well as everybody become more aware of mental health issues and creating a culture that really respect the diversity, inclusion, and really respect people's their mental health issues, and creating a culture that allow people to come in with their true selves. So it's okay, to tell people or to share with people that I'm not feeling well now. I feel a little bit down these days. I may not as productive as before. So we do a lot of educational work to let everybody understand that this is pretty common here. It doesn't mean this person is not good. They just need some time. They need some space to recover. So that's starting from the education side. And also, I coach, I train managers and employees. So in my coaching sessions, a lot of times people mention about this, and I also encourage them to get support, get help, and let your network, let your manager know so they can support you better. So I will stop there. Time issue.
No, thank you so much. And I know that a bunch of people are wondering how they can get a hold of you. So I will say that Michelle is in LinkedIn if you all want to look Michelle and Jason up and get a hold of them. But thank you both for such a great session. We want to thank our ASL interpreter, Ashley Wagner. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. As you know, there's so much more of the conference to come. So if you want to visit our site, results.wa.gov, you can revisit sessions that you watch live, sessions you might have missed, download copy of the presenter's materials, and then sign up for additional sessions that you have yet to sign up for. You will see a survey pop up. Please take a moment to complete that so we can gather your real-time feedback and pass it on to our wonderful presenters, and then also evaluate that ourselves so that we can continually improve. But thank you again, everyone, for attending our session. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. We hope to see you in the next couple sessions coming up today. All right, have a good one. Thanks again, Michelle and Jason.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.